If you've ever felt unusually tired, foggy, or even a little shaky about 30 to 60 minutes after eating, there's a reason for that. And it has almost nothing to do with what you ate and almost everything to do with what happened right after your fork went down. Most people believe blood sugar control comes down to diet alone. Fewer people know that a habit costing nothing, requiring no equipment, and taking less time than it takes to watch a commercial break can meaningfully change how your body handles that after-meal sugar spike. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly what that habit is, why the timing matters more than almost anyone realizes, and how to fit it into a normal day without turning your life upside down. Stick around, because the part most people get wrong isn't whether to do this, it's when. Let's start with why this matters so much, especially for anyone over 55. As we get older, our bodies naturally become a little less efficient at clearing sugar from the bloodstream after a meal. This isn't a personal failing or a sign that something is broken. It's simply a normal part of aging, related to gradual changes in how muscles respond to insulin, the hormone that helps move sugar out of the blood and into cells where it can be used for energy. When that process slows down, blood sugar can stay elevated for longer after eating, and repeated spikes over months and years are linked to a higher risk of type 2 diabetes, heart and blood vessel strain, and general fatigue that can make daily life feel harder than it should. The good news is that this is exactly the kind of thing that responds well to a small, consistent habit, and you don't need a gym membership or a medical degree to start. So what is this habit? It's walking. Specifically, it's walking within about an hour after you finish eating, ideally within the first 30 minutes. Now, before you click away thinking, I already know walking is good for me, stay with me, because the timing piece is the part that changes everything. Most people who walk for exercise do it in the morning before breakfast or later in the day as a separate activity, completely disconnected from meals. That's a genuinely healthy habit, and there's nothing wrong with it. But researchers who study blood sugar have found something interesting. A walk taken specifically after a meal does something a walk at a random time of day doesn't do nearly as well. It intercepts the sugar spike while it's happening, rather than trying to clean it up after the fact. Here's the simple science behind it, explained the way your own doctor might explain it to you in an appointment. When you eat, especially foods with carbohydrates like bread, rice, potatoes, or fruit, your digestive system breaks those carbohydrates down into glucose, which is just a fancy word for the sugar your body uses as fuel. That glucose enters your bloodstream and your blood sugar level begins to climb. Under normal circumstances, your pancreas releases insulin to help move that glucose out of the blood and into your muscles and other tissues, where it either gets used right away or stored for later. When you walk after eating, your leg muscles are contracting and working muscles are hungry for fuel. They pull glucose out of your bloodstream directly, almost independent of insulin, which means you get a second pathway for clearing that sugar spike on top of whatever your body is already doing on its own. Think of it like this. If insulin is one door letting sugar out of a crowded room, muscle activity opens a second door. Two doors clear a crowded room faster than one. This is where the curiosity gap comes in, and I promise it's worth waiting for. Multiple clinical studies, including research published in respected journals like Diabetologia and Diabetes Care, have measured exactly how much of a difference this timing makes. In several controlled studies, a walk of just 10 to 15 minutes taken shortly after a meal reduced the after-meal blood sugar spike by a meaningful amount, with some studies showing reductions of 20 to 30%, and select studies showing reductions approaching or even exceeding 50% under certain conditions. That's not a rounding error. That's the difference between a blood sugar spike that strains your system and one that your body handles with far less stress. And this benefit shows up not just in people who already have type 2 diabetes, but in people with prediabetes and even people with completely normal blood sugar, which tells researchers this isn't a niche fix for a narrow group of people. It's a broadly useful tool for almost anyone. But here's the detail that trips most people up, and it's the reason so many well-meaning walkers never see this benefit even though they're doing everything else right. Timing is not flexible here the way it is with general exercise. A walk taken 2 or 3 hours after a meal, once digestion has already finished and blood sugar has already peaked and started coming back down on its own, doesn't capture nearly the same benefit. By then, the spike has already happened. It's a little like trying to catch rain in a bucket after the storm has already passed. The walk still counts as good exercise, and it's still worth doing, but it's not doing the specific job we're talking about today. The window that seems to matter most, based on the research, is starting your walk within about 30 to 60 minutes after you finish eating, and continuing for at least 10 to 15 minutes. Now, before we go further, let's talk about who this really matters for, because I don't want anyone watching this to feel unnecessarily alarmed. If your doctor has never mentioned blood sugar concerns to you, this habit is still worth adopting simply because it supports long-term metabolic health and energy levels. But it becomes especially relevant if you've been told you have prediabetes, if you have a family history of type 2 diabetes, if you've noticed that afternoon slump or brain fog after carbohydrate-heavy meals, or if you're simply someone who wants to stay ahead of a problem rather than react to one later. This is prevention, not treatment. It's not a replacement for any medication or medical guidance you've already been given. It's a tool that works alongside whatever care plan you and your doctor have already put together. Let's walk through what this looks like in real life, because knowing the science is one thing, but actually building the habit is another. Picture Carol, a 68-year-old retired school teacher. Carol used to finish dinner and settle straight into her recliner to watch the evening news, the same as most of us do without thinking twice about it. After learning about post-meal walking, she didn't overhaul her whole evening. She simply pushed her recliner time back by 15 minutes and used that time to walk a slow loop around her block or on rainy days up and down her hallway while the coffee maker finished its cycle. Nothing about her day became harder. She didn't need new shoes, a treadmill, or a walking group. She just moved the walk she was probably going to take at some point anyway to right after her meal instead of later in the evening. That's really the whole habit. It's not about adding more activity to your day. For a lot of people, it's about repositioning activity you're already doing. This brings us to a common mistake people make when they hear about this and get excited to try it. The first mistake is treating it like it needs to be intense to count. It doesn't. This isn't about speed walking or getting your heart rate up into a demanding zone. A gentle, comfortable pace is enough because the goal here is muscle activity, not cardiovascular exertion. If you can hold a conversation while you walk, you're moving at a perfectly appropriate pace for this purpose. The second mistake is trying to do too much too fast. If walking for 15 minutes after every single meal feels unrealistic right out of the gate, that's completely understandable and you don't need to force it. Even a 5-minute walk after your largest meal of the day, usually dinner for most people, is a reasonable place to start, and you can build from there as it becomes a natural part of your routine. The third mistake, and this one is important, is skipping this habit if you have joint pain, balance concerns, or mobility limitations without first talking to your doctor or physical therapist about what's safe for you. Walking is wonderful, but it isn't the only way to get muscles moving after a meal. Gentle standing activities, light housework, or even seated leg movements recommended by a physical therapist can offer some similar benefit if a full walk isn't currently realistic for you. The point isn't the specific activity. The point is getting your muscles working shortly after you eat. Let's also talk honestly about what this habit can't do, because overselling it wouldn't serve you well, and it isn't something we're comfortable doing. Post-meal walking is not a cure for diabetes, and it's not a substitute for any medication you've been prescribed. If you've been told you have diabetes or pre-diabetes, this habit is something to fold into your existing care plan, not a reason to change or stop anything without talking to your healthcare provider first. Blood sugar management is influenced by many things working together, including the types and amounts of food you eat, sleep quality, stress levels, medications, and genetics. This walking habit is one piece of a much bigger picture, but it happens to be one of the easiest, lowest cost, lowest risk pieces available to almost everyone, which is exactly why it's worth talking about. There's another layer to this worth mentioning because it connects to something many of you have told us matters deeply: independence. Chronically elevated blood sugar over years contributes to complications that can affect vision, kidney function, nerve health in the feet and hands, and cardiovascular health, all of which play a role in staying active, mobile, and independent as we age. This isn't about fear. It's about recognizing that small, sustainable daily habits are often more powerful over the long run than dramatic, hard-to-maintain changes. A 15-minute walk after dinner is something almost anyone can sustain for years. A complicated diet overhaul often isn't. When it comes to long-term health, the habit you'll actually stick with usually beats the habit that looks more impressive on paper. Let's talk about why this particular window of time, that first 30 to 60 minutes after eating, behaves so differently than any other point in the day. Your blood sugar doesn't rise instantly the moment food touches your plate. It takes time for digestion to break carbohydrates down into glucose and for that glucose to make its way into your bloodstream. For most people, blood sugar starts climbing within the first 15 to 30 minutes after eating and tends to reach its highest point somewhere between 30 and 90 minutes after the meal, depending on what was eaten and how quickly it digests. This means the window for a post-meal walk to do its best work lines up almost exactly with the window where blood sugar is actively climbing. Walk too early before you've really started digesting and there's less glucose in the bloodstream yet to clear. Walk too late after the spike has already peaked and started coming down on its own and you've missed the part where the extra help was most needed. The sweet spot researchers keep landing on again and again across different studies is that 30 to 60 minute mark after the first bite. It also helps to understand why muscle activity specifically has this effect, because it's a little different from how we usually think about exercise. Most of us think of exercise benefits in terms of calories burned or heart rate raised, but there's a separate, more immediate mechanism at play here. When a muscle contracts, whether that's from walking, climbing stairs, or even standing up and down repeatedly, it activates a kind of transport system inside the muscle cell that pulls glucose in from the bloodstream to use as immediate fuel. This transport system works largely independent of insulin, which is part of why it's so useful, especially for anyone whose body has become less efficient at using insulin over the years. You're essentially giving your body an alternate route to lower blood sugar, one that doesn't rely on the same hormonal pathway that tends to slow down with age. That's a meaningful distinction because it means this habit can help even in situations where insulin alone isn't doing the full job anymore. Something else worth mentioning is how this habit compares to other after-meal recommendations you may have heard over the years, some of which are actually working against you without anyone realizing it. Many of us grew up hearing that you should rest after a big meal, sit quietly, maybe even lie down for a while to let digestion do its work undisturbed. That advice made sense in a certain era, but newer research paints a more nuanced picture. Sitting or lying down after eating doesn't cause harm on its own, but it also doesn't offer the blood sugar benefit that light movement does. And for some people, especially those who deal with reflux or heartburn, lying down shortly after a meal can actually make digestive discomfort worse. A gentle walk, by contrast, tends to support digestion rather than working against it, all while providing this added blood sugar benefit. So in a way, this habit challenges an old assumption many of us were raised with, and the research increasingly suggests that gentle movement, not stillness, is the better choice after eating for most people. Let's also talk about a second real-life example, because seeing how this fits into different kinds of lives makes it easier to picture in your own. Consider Frank, a 73-year-old retired mechanic who lives with his wife in a small apartment with no easy outdoor walking path nearby, especially in the winter months. Frank assumed this habit wasn't realistic for him because he pictured post-meal walking as something that required a park, a treadmill, or at least a safe sidewalk. Instead, Frank built a simple routine of walking slow laps through his living room and kitchen for about 10 minutes after dinner, sometimes while listening to a podcast, sometimes just enjoying the quiet. It wasn't glamorous, and it didn't look like the walking routines you might see in a fitness video, but it accomplished exactly what the research points to. Muscle activity, shortly after eating, sustained for about 10 minutes. That's really all it takes. The habit doesn't require ideal circumstances. It requires a willingness to move gently for a short window of time wherever you happen to be. For those of you who already walk regularly, but do it at a different time of day, like first thing in the morning, I want to be clear that we are not suggesting you give that up. A morning walk offers its own set of benefits, including support for mood, cardiovascular health, and overall fitness, and there's no reason to abandon a habit that's already working well for you. What we're suggesting is an addition, not a replacement. If your schedule and energy allow for it, adding a short walk after your largest meal on top of whatever activity you're already doing may offer this specific blood sugar-related benefit that a morning walk alone doesn't fully capture simply because of the timing relative to your meals. It's also worth touching on hydration, since it often comes up alongside conversations about blood sugar and movement. Staying reasonably hydrated throughout the day supports many aspects of metabolic health, and having a glass of water before your post-meal walk is a simple, complementary habit many people find helpful. This isn't a required step for the walking habit to work, but it's a small addition that costs nothing and supports your overall well-being at the same time. If you're the kind of person who likes to track progress rather than just take things on faith, there are simple ways to notice whether this habit is making a difference for you personally without needing specialized equipment. Some people notice they feel less foggy or sluggish in the hour or two after a meal once they've built this habit consistently for a few weeks. Others simply notice better energy in the evening, since a large after-meal blood sugar spike followed by a sharp drop can sometimes contribute to that heavy, tired feeling many people associate with eating a big dinner. If you already use a home blood sugar monitor as recommended by your doctor, you may notice a difference in your readings on days you walk after meals compared to days you don't, though of course this should always be discussed with your healthcare provider rather than used to make decisions about medication on your own. If you're wondering how to actually build this into your week without it feeling like one more thing on your to-do list, here's a simple way to think about it. Start with just one meal a day, likely dinner, since that's often the largest meal and the one with the most room for a spike. Set a simple reminder if that helps, whether that's a note on the fridge, an alarm on your phone, or simply pairing the walk with something you already do, like taking the dog out or checking the mail. After a couple of weeks, once it feels automatic, you can decide whether you want to add it after lunch as well. There's no requirement to do this after every meal to see benefit. Even one consistent post-meal walk a day done regularly over weeks and months appears to support better overall blood sugar patterns based on the research we've discussed. It's also worth addressing something practical. Weather, energy levels, and bad days happen to everyone, and this habit should never become a source of guilt. If you miss a day or a week, that doesn't erase the benefit of the days you did walk, and it doesn't mean you have to start over from zero. Sustainable habits are built on consistency over time, not perfection. If a 10 or 15-minute outdoor walk isn't possible on a particular day because of weather or how you're feeling, walking in place indoors, doing a few slow laps around your living room, or even standing and doing gentle marching in place while watching television can offer some benefit. The goal is muscle activity shortly after eating, not a specific location or a specific number of steps. One more thing worth mentioning, because it often surprises people: this habit may offer benefits beyond blood sugar alone. Light movement after meals has also been associated in research with improved digestion for some people, and the consistency of a daily routine like this can support better sleep patterns over time, since regular movement is broadly linked to sleep quality. We're not claiming this walk will fix sleep or digestion on its own, and everyone's body responds differently, but it's a reasonable bonus to be aware of as you build the habit, on top of the blood sugar benefit that brought you here in the first place. Before we wrap up, it's important to say clearly, if you've been experiencing symptoms like unusual thirst, frequent urination, unexplained fatigue, blurry vision, or slow healing cuts, these can be signs worth discussing with your doctor, since they may be related to blood sugar levels that deserve proper testing and evaluation. This video is meant to give you a helpful, evidence-informed habit to support your health, not to diagnose or replace a conversation with a qualified healthcare provider. If something has been concerning you, please don't wait to bring it up at your next appointment. Let's bring this together with what we've covered. Walking after meals, particularly within 30 to 60 minutes of finishing eating, gives your muscles a second insulin-independent way to clear glucose from your bloodstream, which can meaningfully reduce the size of the after-meal blood sugar spike, with research showing benefits ranging from modest to substantial depending on the study and the person. The timing matters more than the intensity. A gentle 10 to 15-minute walk is enough for most people to see benefit, and it's a habit that can be built gradually, starting with just one meal a day without requiring any special equipment, gym membership, or drastic lifestyle change. It's not a cure and it's not a replacement for medical care, but it is one of the simplest, safest, most evidence-supported tools available for supporting healthy blood sugar as we age, and it fits into a normal day without asking much of you at all. If this video gave you something useful, we'd love to hear from you in the comments. Are you someone who already takes a walk after dinner, or is this a habit you're going to try for the first time this week? Let us know your age and where you're watching from. We always love seeing how many different corners of the world our community reaches. And if you've noticed a difference in how you feel after meals since starting a habit like this, share it with us. Your experience might be exactly what encourages someone else watching to give it a try. Thank you for spending this time with us today. Take care of yourself, and we'll see you in the next video.